Hi, and welcome to Old Time Knowledge. Well, today I have been outside working in my garden pretty much all day long. It was in the 60s. It felt like it was in the 70s. It was so nice. It's going to be cold again tomorrow and the next day, but I've got a lot to do, and this is the time of year where I'm really starting to get into it. I've started a bunch of seeds indoors, and in my case, because I know we're going to have more or less mild temperatures from here forward, our last frost date is March 15th, I think, here in North Carolina, which means we could potentially have some frost between now and then. But I have a clear plastic bin that I'm putting over any seedlings that I put outside. And of course, ones that are in my house, they're not going to be affected by it. But the reason why I'm recording this video is because I don't want you to put this off. If you're not already growing some food, you need to be growing some food. You need to plant a garden. You need to, even if you're in an apartment and you just have a balcony or a patio or something, grow some food. You're going to be really glad that you did, because I just can't believe how high prices are getting. I mean, things are just getting so expensive. And my mom was telling me she was at Lowe's today, or might have been yesterday, and she was just shocked to see really small little pots of herbs and different things that were like over $4 a piece. So if you're starting things from seed, it's going to be way cheaper, and you're going to be able to reap the benefits of that. There are so many different ways that you can get started. But one thing that I really want to highlight is I like to have what I call a survival garden. How do I define a survival garden? Well, what I mean by that is a garden where you can grow things, and then because you're growing open pollinated seeds or heirloom seeds, that means that you can actually save seeds from year to year. You can get the seeds from the things that you've grown and then save those and then use them to plant in future years. We actually have some seeds that are probably close to a decade old, and we're still using them. My mom, she harvested from one of our collard plants, some of our collard plants, like, I don't know, ages ago. Seeds from those collard plants. It was a particular kind, a variety of collards that she was growing, and we just loved that variety so much. And so she harvested a bunch of seeds from that, and we, every year we grow those and we save those seeds. So we have like a mason jar full of those seeds, and they keep producing. It's so good. It's fantastic. But when you have heirloom seeds, open pollinated seeds, you can do that. When you buy hybrid seeds, when you buy things that are like new varieties that they've come out with that might be really good in specific areas, or that have neat colors or different things like that, where it'll specifically say hybrid, you're not going to be able to save the seeds from those and get a reliable result for future generations. It's going to be great this year. And I do grow some hybrid seeds because sometimes there are some specific things that I want that are hybrid seeds. But I also like to grow some old standbys that I know are heirloom varieties and that I'll be able to collect seeds from and grow again and again. And many of my seeds that I'm planting this year are just what's left over from previous year's gardens. Yes, I still buy seeds because I love buying seeds, and it's a problem. I'm kind of addicted to it. But this is a perfect time of year. I know our local Dollar Tree carries seeds. They're perfectly fine. They work. There's nothing wrong with their seeds. I have to say our Dollar Tree is pretty picked over right now, but if you can go to Dollar Tree, a lot of those seeds were marked as 4 for $1, which is amazing. Dollar General often has seeds. Naturally, Lowe's is going to have seeds. You can go online and find all kinds of vendors to buy seeds. One of my favorite online vendors for seeds is Seeds and Such, because they have really reasonable prices, and I've ordered a lot of seeds from them. They're a great resource. But how do you know if you're buying open pollinated seeds or hybrid seeds? Well, like I said, you're going to be looking for the word hybrid. If they're hybrid seeds, those aren't the ones that you're going to be able to save seeds from to grow from year to year. Again, I'm not saying don't buy them. I'm just saying know what you're getting. I think it's wise to stick with some varieties that you know are going to be heirloom that you can count on. Roma tomatoes is a good example. Better Boy tomatoes. Beefsteak tomatoes, those are all heirloom varieties of tomatoes. There's crookneck squash, there's zucchini varieties. There are a lot of different there's a lot of heirloom varieties of cabbages and carrots. And another thing that you might want to think about is check your pantry and see if you have any potatoes that are starting to sprout, because if you do, then you have the start of potato plants, which is another thing that I do. You will hear some gardening purists say, oh, you really should just buy seed potatoes and use those because you don't know what you're getting when you're getting potatoes from the grocery store. But if you have potatoes that are sprouting, you know one thing, and that is that they can sprout. And if they can sprout, they can grow potato plants. So at least that's been my experience. So if you have any potatoes that are starting to get those little sprouts on them, as long as they're not like really long, those really long white sprouts, then you'll be fine to actually, if they're small potatoes, you can plant them just like they are. You'll probably want to make it so there's only one or, maybe two little sprouts on the potato. But another thing you can do is cut the potatoes, say in half or whatever. You probably don't want them to be more than maybe an ounce or two. If they get over 3 ounces, then it's kind of counterproductive. But then what you do is you can cut those potatoes and like in half, and then let them dry out. Let the cut side dry out. Give it a couple of days, and then you can plant them. There are tons of videos on YouTube about planting potatoes, so I don't want to cover ground that's already been well covered. I'm just trying to give you some ideas of things that you can be doing right now. This is the time to start thinking ahead. This is the time to start planning and planting. There's a lot of seeds that you might want to start indoors right now because they're going to need to get transferred out to the garden very soon, whether it's in mid-March or April. A lot of times there'll be seeds where they'll say start them indoors 8 to 12 weeks before your last frost date. Well, what's your last frost date? Your last frost date is the last date in your area that you typically might see frost, where temperatures are going to get 32 or below. So that's the last date in the spring. Your first frost date is going to be the first date in the fall, when you might typically see freezing temperatures in your area. So those are two very important dates when it comes to gardening, because there's a lot of things that are going to need to be done based on when your last frost date is, which is that spring, the last date in the spring where you're likely to have frost, and then the first frost date in the fall. Okay, so I'm going to link some information in the show notes below, but I also have some great resources on my blog about this, oldtimeknowledge.com. I've got articles about gardening on there. You're going to want to find those frost dates for your area. Also, often you're going to have agricultural colleges in your area, or home extension offices or things like that. I know here in North Carolina State University produces a fantastic calendar that tells you exactly what months you can grow different plants and whether or not they should be started from seed indoors, or whether or not they could be directly sown in the ground outside. They have it broken up into Eastern, Central, and Western North Carolina because we have very different climates in our state. Here on the coast, things are one way. In the mountains, they'll often have snow, whereas we almost never have snow here on the coast. But in your state, surely there's going to be some college that has some sort of, agricultural majors, some sort of agricultural focus. That would be the college that you're probably going to want to look up and see. Whatever state it is you live in, whether it's Iowa or Oregon or Texas or whatever, just look it up and say planting calendar for, and then your state. And you should be able to find a planting calendar that's going to tell you exactly what needs to go in the ground when, and which plants you might want to start from seed indoors before it's time to put them outside. When it comes to root vegetables, beets, turnips, carrots, rutabagas, things like that, those are plants, those are seeds you're going to want to directly sow in the garden. And the reason for that is just hard to transfer a root crop. The exception to that is onions. Onions you can start from seed, and they are the roots on those, once they start growing, are so durable. You can easily split them up and replant them and space them out just exactly as you need to. So that's something to keep in mind. The seeds that I've started already this year that I've, they're going. I've got a few varieties of onions. I've got a couple of varieties of lettuce, some peppers, some tomatoes, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and cauliflower. I think that's it right now, but I will be doing some root vegetables the next nice day we have. Meaning I'll be planting some carrots and some beets and some turnips because I love all of those. So those are on my agenda. So I just wanted to record this video and hopefully get you thinking about growing some vegetables. Again, with prices just going up, and sometimes you're even having a hard time finding the things that you need, it's a really wise move to make sure that you're growing some things to at least offset your grocery bill so that you can still have fresh produce without it breaking the bank. And I'll tell you that pretty much any seeds that you find at places like Dollar General or Dollar Tree, places like that, those are typically going to be your heirloom seeds. So those are the ones that you're going to be able to plant them, and then whatever comes from them, the seeds can be saved and then replanted from year to year. There are unique ways, for instance, of saving the seeds from tomatoes. You don't just pull the seeds out of the tomatoes and save them. There's a little almost fermentation process that has to take place. But these are things you can look up when it's time. So you would grow the tomatoes first, and then you might have some tomato seeds that you get from the tomatoes, but you'll need to watch some videos probably about how to do that. Let's see. There are some channels, because some of you might be hearing me say this and thinking, I don't have money to deal with a garden. And believe me, I know it's expensive. I have saved up money and I have invested money this year in basically refilling my beds. I've kind of started from scratch with my beds again because we have really tenacious wiregrass here. And the beds that I had, even though they were 10 inches tall, that stupid wiregrass kept coming up through the dirt. And so I just needed to put several layers of weed barrier down and then put my beds. And so I've refilled them from scratch using a mixture of garden soil and peat moss and black cow, which I absolutely love. And then I'll fertilize in those beds as plants get transferred into them, because different plants need different kinds of fertilizer. And for instance, when I plant my tomato plants in the beds, I'll put some gypsum in the bottom of those holes to make sure they have calcium so they don't get blossom end rot. There's a lot of little tricks you can do. And again, this isn't a gardening channel, so I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of videos on the ins and outs of specific gardening techniques, because there are people who are so much smarter than me about that. Some channels I recommend. Gardener Scott is fantastic. He is hands down my favorite gardening channel on YouTube. If you want budget gardening tips, I really like, Robbie and Gary Gardening Easy, I think it's called. They're based in Southern California, and Robbie, she has all these great tips for growing in totes. So like if you have any totes at your house, like those plastic totes, she has so many great tips about growing in those totes and how she sets all that up. She composts in place, which means she doesn't have some separate compost pile that she's worrying about turning. She literally just composts right in her totes, like right in like a pot that she'll sit in her tote. And her plants thrive. They're doing so good. And it's such a budget-friendly way to do things. She has lots of other videos on attracting hummingbirds, which is really cool. And creating, like using, making your own solar powered bird fountains and things like that. So that's a really good channel. I'll link that one below. MI Gardener's another great channel. Another channel that I've liked in the past is The Rusted Garden. I know Gary Pilarczyk has some good videos about setting up, selling seeds or selling seedlings. And especially in this day and age, as expensive as seedlings are, it might be a lucrative thing if you wanted to make some extra money to get some seeds growing. And then Gary Pilarczyk has a playlist of what you need to do to set up a plant sale and how much money you can make with that. So that's another great resource I will link below. let's see, there are so many great channels. And so I'm not going to try to recover everything that's covered in those channels, but I'm just here to tell you there are lots of great resources, and YouTube can be your best friend when it comes to learning that stuff. So I think this pretty much covers it. Make sure you check the show notes below. If you're watching this on your TV, go to your computer or your phone, and so you can read the show notes and get all those links, because there's going to be a lot of valuable links there. In the meantime, I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.